Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Peace Islands Institute, New York. Before we go any further, I would like to brief you about the Peace Islands Institute. The Peace Islands Institute, New York is a nonprofit and non-governmental civic organization which aspires to bring together different points of view and voices with the spirit of mutual respect and acceptance in order to develop original and alternative perspectives on social phenomena as they relate to our lives, present explanations as well as solutions, support successful practices, and as such contribute to achieving world peace by creating realms of peaceful coexistence or peace islands. Now I would like to invite Mr. Mehmet Kilic, Director of the Center for Global Affairs of the Peace Islands Institute, for further opening remarks.
Good evening, distinguished guests. Welcome to the Peace Islands Institute. I would like to thank our speaker, Honorable Natalie Quantavel, the Consul General of Italy, and also my special thanks to our host, Mr. Abdullah Karataş. Peace and stability are the two important factors in building economic stability and economic development around the world. But likewise, economic development is also very important in maintaining peace. So these are like two sides of a coin. Ambassador Luncheon Series is to promote peace and maintain stability in our global world. This lecture series is to inform and educate the global society about various perspectives and prevent conflicts through constructive engagement and dialogue, and thereby contribute to peace and strengthen social coexistence. Today's Ambassador Luncheon Series will establish the effects of economic crisis in Europe, especially in Italy, and also its international responses to it. The ongoing economic crisis in Europe continues to shake the global economy. However, uncertainty remains, and queries have arisen over effectiveness of multilateral institutions like the European Union. The Eurozone's fiscally troubled economies like Greece, Portugal, Ireland, Italy, and Spain triggered a severe crisis of confidence in the global market. Investors began to shed exposure to banks that might potentially be affected in the European countries. As Italian borrowing costs hit new highs, Mr. Berlusconi lost his parliamentary majority, giving way to Mr. Mario Monti to take over his position of Prime Minister of Italy after 16 years of Berlusconi term. Today, I believe today's lecture will be very interesting, very enjoyable, but at the same time very educational to all of us. I hope today's program will add another perspective in our understanding of the European economic crisis and its global effects worldwide. Again, thank you so much for coming and enjoy the program. Thank you.
The topic of the discussion today is the ongoing European economic crisis and its effects on Italy. The event this afternoon features Her Excellency Natalia Quintavalle, the Consul General of Italy in New York, and our host, Mr. Abdullah Karataş. Mr. Karataş is head of U.S. fixed income credit trading for Natixis, where he has worked for the past 6 years. Prior to Natixis, he worked at Barclays Capital and earlier at Lehman Brothers. Mr. Karataş received his MBA degree from Yale University and his BA degree summa cum laude in economics from Middlebury College. Mr. Karataş's area of trading expertise encompasses the fixed income investment grade and high yield universe, corporate bonds, CDs, financials covered bonds, and treasuries. Now I would like to turn it over to Mr. Karataş.
First off, the Honorable Natalia Quintavalle, welcome.
Thank you.
Natalia has over 2 decades of experience working as a diplomat for Italy, both at the United Nations, with postings in France and Saudi Arabia, and since 2011, she has been working here in New York as the Consul General for Italy. Without further ado, let's start off and get your perspective on everything that's happening on the economic front.
But, first, thank you for inviting me to have this very interesting meeting. The scope of this conversation, when I read it, I realized it's very, very ambitious. Maybe far too ambition for me, ambitious. In fact, many very well-known economists have expressed themselves about the origin of the economic crisis in Italy and in Europe. They have expressed their opinion about the international responses and about the social and political implication of it in the different countries. By the way, I have to say that that does not mean at all that they succeeded in indicating any viable solution. But anyway, they are the experts. After that, don't expect me to say anything new or particularly enlightening on the issue. I will limit myself to offer to you my recollection of the current status of the European economy and my understanding of the measures taken at the European level, and then try to focus on the situation in Italy in this framework. Starting with the European economic situation, since 2008, Europe has faced two major crises. The banking crisis at the end of 2008 and the sovereign debt crisis later on. They could have had incredibly disruptive effects, but these effects were contained because public authorities stepped in, and they are still stepping in, to provide economic stability by providing financing to the banking system, both by central national banks and recently also by the ECB. Today, on average, the recession Europe is facing is mild, but with large differences between member states. The Eurozone GDP is now projected to contract by 0.3% in 2012 and return to growth next year. Some European countries are growing. Price stability, a condition for economic and political confidence, has been maintained. Today, macroeconomic policy margins are limited. During the crisis, the fiscal and monetary instruments were fully mobilized, and lately the European Central Bank has stretched its instrument close to its limits. Debt and deficit levels leave hardly any room for fiscal stimulus, even if some countries have more room than others to let automatic stabilizer play. But fiscal consolidation is not an objective in itself. It is a sort of a prerequisite for sustainable growth. Structural reforms remain the main lever at our disposals, and we know that their effects are not immediate, nor can they be, but they will make the difference over time and create jobs in due course. This is clear to us, but it's not always very easy to be understood by people who are suffering the effect of some reforms. So which kind of response has been given to this situation, to this crisis, by the European countries? At the national level, some brave, courageous decisions have been taken across Europe. In the financial world, in the energy sector, in the labor market, in the sheltered services. And we are all convinced that social fairness can only be achieved when the effort and sacrifices are spread evenly. So we need really to pay the greatest attention to the social effects of the proposed measures. Just to mention some of the several important decisions that have been made at EU level, let's recall some specific financial packages which have been launched in coordination with the IMF to sustain Ireland, Portugal, and Greece. Even the EU treaties have been modified in order to establish the European Stability Mechanism, which was signed on February 2nd by the Eurozone member states. The European Stability Mechanism, it's quite important, has a lending capacity of 800 billion euros to be mobilized as a firewall against speculation and attacks to the weakest economies of the euro area. As you probably know, before it was impossible, it was forbidden by the EU treaties for the ECB and the Central National Bank to buy primary bonds on the primary market. Then there was the so-called six-pack, 6 new legislative measures which have been adopted to reinforce growth and stability pact. They provide stronger preventive and corrective tools to ensure fiscal sustainability and a more effective excessive deficit procedure. Then there was another pack, 2 other packs regulating Eurozone member access to future assistance packages. Still with reference to fiscal discipline, a new treaty has been signed, the so-called Fiscal Compact. And in this case, it was not only the Eurozone members, but it was agreed upon by all the EU member states except UK and Czech Republic. Then there were other measures, the European semester, the Euro Plus Pact, but there is one other very important decision which has been taken, a new ambitious strategy called Europe 2020, which has been adopted as a Europe's strategy for jobs and growth. And it sets 5 targets for 2020 to promote employment, improve the condition for innovation, research and development, meet climate change and energy objectives, improve education levels and promote social inclusion, in particular through the reduction of poverty. This simple enumeration of objective on one side and measures on the other side shows to which extent the crisis has pushed European governments to take unprecedented measures in order to reinforce stability and increase economic coordination to an extent which was really simply not imaginable only 3 years ago, let's say. So what will happen now? Despite these important institutional changes, the crisis is still there. And for some countries, it represents a real crucial threat. For this reason, there is much more which has to be done to return to growth and tackle unemployment. The Union's regular budget is one instrument. Before the end of the year, the EU financial framework for 2014-2020 should be agreed upon. Even if it represents only about 1% of the EU GDP, this does amount to around 1 trillion euros, if I'm not wrong. I'm always cautious in mentioning numbers because they are so huge for me that it's very difficult to be sure that I'm not saying something very wrong. This amount can have huge effect in terms of leverage. It enables investment with a Europe-wide growth potential, which otherwise would simply not be possible. Investing in energy or transport, financing ambitious research or digital networks. And I really think that this is a unique occasion to transform something like the regular budget into a real tool for the future growth. More generally, the European Council, which is, as you know, the senior political body of the EU, where the leaders of the 27 member states sit, and chaired by a permanent president, Herman Van Rompuy, has decided that efforts will continue in order to reach different objectives, bring the single market to a new stage, complete the digital single market by 2015, reduce the administrative and regulatory burden at EU and national level, which is an issue debated everywhere in Europe, and I think it's very important. Remove trade barriers and ensure better market access and investment conditions with key partners, and creating the best possible environment for entrepreneurs to commercialize their ideas and create jobs, and making demand-led innovation a main driver of Europe's research and development policy, in particular creating an effective EU-wide venture capital regime. Obviously, there is no reason to disagree with this approach and not to go along with the strategies designed at European level, like using the EU regular budget as a leverage for investment, as well as continue to monitor the compliance of the EU countries with these specially designed regulations. But it is also easy to observe that this is not enough, and each and every country should find the right mix of measures to ensure both stability and growth. Which is a $1 million question, 1 billion, since we which is the suitable mix of measures for Italy. The government of Italy, under the guide of President Monti, is carrying on a wide spectrum of not only immediate measures, but also structural reforms. They have been praised by the European institution and more recently by the IMF as an example of what countries in Europe and elsewhere should do to tackle the crisis. So if we look into Italy, let me start by a consideration. Italy's economic situation is different from that of other European countries. While, let's say, the mother of all our troubles as Italian is an historic huge national debt, 120% of national GDP, Italy still displays some positive economic data, such as the absence of major macroeconomic imbalances, apart from high debt, public debt. No major bubbles in the housing market, low household debt, and as my Minister of Justice said in a very simple and clear way at the New York Stock Exchange 2 days ago, in Italy we save money to buy our own houses, not to make risky investments. So that's in this period can help a lot. And other positive element is a fundamentally sound banking system and no major external imbalances. In addition, there have been no discretionary spending during the crisis, very prudent fiscal policy, new policy measure promptly enacted to continue fiscal consolidation and to enhance potential growth. This is the positive side. Nevertheless, the European sovereign debt crisis is a major threat to Italy's economic growth and fiscal sustainability. Furthermore, while, as I said, there are no major imbalances for foreign exchange, it is fair to recall that Italy's current account has worsened gradually. From 2000 to 2010, Italy experienced a modest deterioration in the current account, mostly due to the higher cost of energy imports. Without them, Italy's balance would be largely positive. But in 2011, almost all components of the current account improved. In this situation, and taking in full account of requests made by the European Union, the IMF, and the international financial markets, the Monti government undertook a wide range of measures under three labels. I say it in Italian, is Salva Italia, Libera Italia, and Cresci Italia. The first group is on expenditure cuts and revenue increase, fight against tax evasion. The second is measure for growth and social fairness, and the third is on infrastructure, liberalization, competition, and competitiveness. In the longer term, the government is also pursuing a more general program of reforms, starting by pension system, the labor market, and justice. I have a very long list of measures. I will touch upon some of them. In fact, there are cuts in expenditure, as I said, in social security spending, in local government, like the cost reduction in the number of politically appointed board members, which is a measure a lot of Italians like very much, and in public entity and local government. There are revenue increases, like some measure taken in evaluating the cadastral value of buildings, the higher excise duties on polluting fuels and taxation of luxury goods, 2% increase in the value-added tax rates, and measure to increase transparency and widen the tax basis. Then there is a very important issue, which is the fight against tax evasion, which is one of the major traditional problems registered in Italy. And the government has taken a number of steps to tackle it, such as lowering the legal threshold for cash payment to 1,000 euros, the transmission to the tax agencies of all electronic records and financial transaction, which is done now by banks and other intermediaries. Now cheating to the tax agencies is a criminal offense, and synergies have been established with the Social Security Institute, the INPS, in order to crack down on undeclared economic activities. At the same time, to reward those who pay regularly their duties, and I do repeat, this is a very sensitive social issues, less invasive control will apply to taxpayers who are compliant with the so-called sectoral studies. More generally, the principle the citizens are required to embrace is that if we all will pay, that we will pay less all together if everybody pays its fair share. There are also direct measures to reduce public debt, which include the allocation of a quota of the proceeds from auctioning of CO2 permits to the Fund for the Amortization of Government Bonds. This is expect to raise more than 1 billion euros per year. Then there are measures for growth and social fairness, a lot of measures regarding infrastructure, and another very sensitive sector is the sector of liberalization, competition, and competitiveness. In fact, due to strong lobbying by the respective groups of interest, many economic sectors in Italy enjoy only limited liberalization. The government has again cracked down on those categories, adopting measures like the liberalization of opening hours for retailers, introducing higher competition and strengthening of consumer protection in the financial sector, as well as the strengthening of the antitrust authorities. Some measures are especially devoted to support small and medium enterprises that, as you know, are the real tissue of the economic sector in Italy.
Here as well.
Yeah. Yes, we share that. That's true. So the administrative burden for firms has been curtailed. There is a simplified framework for limited liability company for people under 35 years. So there are really a lot of different measures the government is taking to cut on the expenses from on one side, but to offer some breath, to give some space to and to support and favor investment and growth. I said these are the measures with an immediate impact. They have been taken, they have been decided, some of them they have to be operationalized, but they are there. Then there are the major reforms. These are really very important major reforms for Italy because they touch vital areas of our society. And these are pension, as I said, labor, and justice. The first one, the pension reform, is now already effective. The other two, the labor market reform, it's underway, and the justice reform is partly in the parliament. As far as the pension reform, the goals are enhance the medium and long-term sustainability of the Italy pension system, guarantee fairness across and intra-generations, promote greater flexibility and improve the incentive to remain at work even after the statutory retirement age. And link the retirement age and contributory period to change in the life expectancy, which is really changing a lot in Italy. Then improve transparency, merging entities which are providing pensions. There are a lot of them in Italy, IMPDAT and Pulse IMSS. I don't even know exactly what does correspond to any of these. So we expect about 7.6 billion total cumulative savings in 2014, and an increase to almost 22 billion in 2020. So this is more or less the design of the reform in the pension system. As far as the labor market reform, the list of the different measures, it's even longer, so I don't read it to you. But the major problems are the low labor market flexibility, weak social safety net, generation and gender segmentation, and geographical divide between north and south of Italy. And the proposed legislation deals with all these problems through a number of different measures. One of the most sensitive is the question when we talk about flexibility in the labor market in Italy, you have an immediate very strong reaction from all the different parts. So we have to be very careful in saying that more flexibility should be on both sides, on the hiring side and also on the firing side. And on the hiring side, we should discourage the abuse of temporary contracts, which is something happening right now, and making indefinite work contracts more appealing to companies, so to facilitate the possibility for companies to hire people. On the firing side, obviously the aim is to facilitating more efficient allocation of workers among different sectors. There are also, the measures are not only to reduce, but this is really, there are measures which are supposed to benefit employers through fiscal incentive for a 3-year period. There are additional important measures concerning employment protection, and I don't enter in the big question which is discussed right now in Italy, which is the revision for the dismissal of employees, discriminatory dismissal, or it's a very, very huge debate, and not so easy to understand for somebody who has not spent at least 50 years in Italy and be accustomed with this kind of negotiation. But I would like to mention also a third package of reforms, which is the one in the, concerning the justice sector, which is very relevant to the economic situation because it tackles corruption and other economic crimes. It also includes the establishment of what we call il Tribunale delle Imprese, the commercial courts, which will start operating very soon to reduce time of deliberation and bring more certainty on the regulatory framework. two elements which I really believe are crucial in support of investment in Italy. Again, the Minister of Justice, I'm mentioning her because she was here until yesterday, and I was accompanying her all around New York and Connecticut. And she had the opportunity to explain to me in detail what she is proposing for the reform of justice. And she illustrated it in a very, very interesting way to the New York Stock Exchange. So it's really the matter of giving the possibility of investors from abroad to have certainty about in which way the justice system will react in a specific situation in the business commercial field. So what's next? Next is the spending review. We use the English word for that because it's maybe more easy to be accepted for Italian because maybe they don't understand exactly what we are talking about. And the spending review means revision of public expenditure flows, overhauling of public services with inefficiencies reduction, and expenditure cuts. The criteria is the revision of expenditure of public transfers, checking efficiency and effectiveness, and the rationalization of procurement, census of public property assets to reduce rent expenditure. In the medium term, we expect an amount of expenditure of about 295 billion be reviewed, while in the short term, about 8 billion euro. In a few words, what the government of Italy is trying to do in this situation is fiscal consolidation, growth, and social fairness. And I think that paying due attention to social fairness, it's really, really very important. In the social structure of Italy and of the other European countries, so the question is our social structure able to withstand the economic crisis by accepting that reducing measures that weigh on the standard of living in anticipation of the growth aiming measure to show the awaited results? I think that, at least for Italy, the answer is yes. And this is also thanks to a strong family-based social structure, as well as to the propensity, as I said before, of families to save and invest in assets like real estate, which allow to support through the role of families in a much easier way than other countries, the burden of high unemployment rate, in particular among women and young people. However, the Italian social structure cannot hold against a protracted crisis, and consequently there is urgency of, to enforce measures that encourage promote productive investment and growth.
Natalia, that raises, it's a great way to segue to my first question, which is, you know, this European crisis isn't just a crisis that's a financial crisis or an economic crisis, but it's a crisis that raises questions of political economy. You know, during the Cold War, it was almost a more simple time. Italy's place in the world, Italy's place in Europe was was very well established, within the NATO framework. How do you think this crisis will affect Italy's sense of self from a geopolitical standpoint?
It's not so easy to put together all the different elements which make a country like Italy, especially in the framework of a European Union where there is whose role and whose position is again under discussion. It's difficult to put together all the different elements. What I think is happening right now is that, and what I think the government, Monti, wants to do, is to try to give to Italy, to recover for Italy, a role in making the idea of a European Union strong and viable and as a economic and political actor on the international scene a reality. This is supposed to be the aim of all the European Union countries, but it's not so clear for all of them. On the contrary, I think it's very clear for Italy. And this is taking account what we were going through, the effects of the financial and economic crisis, but also the reshaping of the political and geopolitical organization. I have to say that I think this is of interest also for the United States. To have a European Union as a partner and as a strong and reliable partner. I'm not sure that this is an idea which is shared by the majority of not only political people, let's say, because I saw that there are much more understanding in the political policy maker people in the United States than in the business community. I experienced arriving here a very, very strong reluctance from the business community to put confidence on the EU and its structure and its mechanisms. They told me when I arrived, oh, we like Italy, we want to have business with Italy, but please let alone Greece, and that was the first thing they told me. But don't talk all the time about the European Union. But I continue to talk all the time about the European Union.
The recent election.
Yep.
I have a question for you. Maybe you can give us an off-the-record response. Robert Sulik, the head of the World Bank, declared yesterday, if Greece were to leave the European Union, there are two principal victims, Italy and Spain. Could you give that scenario some consideration? What would happen to Italy if Greece were to leave?
I think it's not a question of what will happen to Italy if Greece leaves the European Union, as you said correctly, because a lot of people, they say Greece will leave the Euro system. That's not possible. There is no mechanism for a country to leave the Euro system. There are mechanisms to leave the European Union. I don't think it's a matter only for Spain and Italy. I think it's a matter for all the European countries and all the rest of the world, but all the European countries, certainly including Germany, if we want to be very, very clear, because Greece is a small country. In purely economic terms, it could be maybe considered as a possibility. But in considering all the social and political implication of that, and the timing and the cost also in terms of procedure and adjustment needed not only by Greece, but also by all the other partners to adapt to this new situation. I think that nobody in Europe could gain from this happening.
To segue onto that question, my question is, do you think that a potential Greek exit could actually precipitate a smaller but better integrated, a leaner, meaner Europe, if you will? Are these the growth pangs of a stronger Europe as opposed to, the dismemberment of a...
I read a very interesting article yesterday on that, and I think that, I don't remember which was exactly, but the old idea of a Europe at two speeds or something like that, to create smaller groups or to let a stronger country to go along and establish a different regulation for the other countries is not on the DNA of the European Union. That's my personal opinion, because what we don't consider is that the European Union is a huge system with an administrative bureaucracy burden. If you want to see it as a burden, it's enormous. But on the other side is also something which is not really reversible.
The gentleman over there, and if you could please state your name and your affiliation along with your question.
Thank you. My name is David Michaels. I'm number 2 at the Foreign Press Association. A belated welcome to New York to you.
Thank you.
My question is very easy. On hindsight, and I'm going to ask you, this can be off the record if you so choose. On hindsight, do you think that Europe, and Italy of course, would have been better off if the body would have just been a customs union and countries would have maintained their own sovereign currency? If so, why? If not, why? Very simple question.
Thank you for this very simple question. My answer is, if you want, more on the feeling side than on economic reasoning. I think that the experience of the common currency is a positive experience. I think that there were a lot of benefits coming from this decision for all the members of the European Union. And I think also that in this, we were talking, geopolitical framework, there is no way for countries like, I don't want to mention the smallest countries like Greece, but bigger countries like Italy or France to stand alone in the economic and political arena. So I don't think that there is a reason to even consider to go back to a situation in which there are relationships like elimination of trade barrier, common market, or something like that. This is EU is a reality, and really we cannot go back.
So the EU is here to stay in some shape, form, or other?
Yes, and I think in increasing integrated way. That's my opinion, personal opinion.
The gentleman at the back.
thank you for coming here. And my name is Öztün Yüksel, and thanks again for enlightening us. My question is, you briefly mentioned about the body of the EU, and since EU was established, it had to go through so many difficulties. And this shows that within EU there was big incoherence. So now with the coming up election and already several elections within the EU, from your point of view, do you think that this will provide more coherence with the new presidents, such as Italy, France, and so on, so other countries? Or do you think it's going to be more incoherence toward the future, and it's going to be more less unification? Thank you.
I can speak a little bit about Italy. I don't dare to say so much about what will happen in France after the election of Mr. Hollande. But I think that, yes, we are, as far as Italy, we are going toward more coherence and more Europe. As far as the others, it depends. But I think that we always say there is the engine of the Europe is France and Germany. I would like to add always Italy, but that's my personal opinion. But anyway, looking at France and Germany, we have to see how the relationship between them, but certainly they will be very, very good, as usual. So I think that there will be there also some coherence. Certainly in France we had already the elections. We had some elections in Germany, and there were some signals which are in a way making the position of Mrs. Merkel a little weaker. So how this different position, which kind of results and which kind of attitude Mrs. Merkel will and the government of Germany will take after this election and looking to the future election is difficult to say. But I think that really the core of Europe, which means the founder member plus of the European Union are and will be still there for more Europe than for less Europe.
Even in France, despite the campaign rhetoric, President Hollande appointed Pierre Moscovici, who's very much a fan of fiscal austerity.
Yeah. So probably it's, he will go along very well with Mrs. Merkel.
Next question.
I'm an Italian, and my more than a question is a thought that I want to share with my Consul General and see what she thinks about it. In all the data, maybe one of the most important things is to think that European Union is the first economy in the world, if you put it all together. So in Europe, that is not united anymore, has at least stopped the process that was going. Yes, it worries a lot in one way. We think President Obama is worried, but also there are other countries, other regions that could take advantage. We know the BRICS coming up. So what I mean is you have to think that somebody that goes down, there is always somebody else that goes up. And my question, well, if you want a question, is the thought is this. I think, yes, Europe can actually, I don't agree with you when you say, Europe is, European Union is here, is not going to go away. I think actually we are at a turning point where Europe either is going to go away and somebody's going to win out of that, means that Europe will be maybe a trade, yes, borders, you still come, the trade between borders will be free and so on, but Europe will go back to the so-called Comunità Europea, just a community, or it will do like exactly what happened in the United States about 250 years ago. What I mean, in the United States, when it became a country, on the beginning, they didn't even know. Actually, there were a lot of states of the Union didn't want to become a country. They wanted to get rid of British, but they didn't want to do that. What they had to do that because they knew that was the only way to survive. They did. The federal state, the United States of America, came together out of a big crisis, out of survival. And I think that's my hope, and that's what I want to share with you. I want to know what you think, is that actually we needed that. We need this. We needed to have some part of the world hoping that we're going to get apart, because that, and then that's a hope that this new president of France will know how to explain this to somebody in Berlin. This is the moment. Either you take it or you lose it.
Well, there was a civil war in the United States.
No.
Do you think there will be a war in mainland Europe?
No. Well, we experienced two major world war, and I think that Europe is now vaccinated about this kind of reaction. No, I don't expect any war. I think that it's true that we have to consider the broader picture and to look to other countries, emerging countries, the BRICS, and so on. It's very important to have the global picture of the world geopolitics. Because we stand in Europe especially to consider ourselves as the world, and so we are obliged to look at other countries like the United States. Is impossible not to consider that the United States are the only left superpower, and but at the same time you tend not to take in always in the picture the other countries. Having said that, I don't think that there are countries which have a real interest in saying in pushing for a dismantled European Union. I think that even if it can be in a way something a little bit too much for somebody to accept and to understand completely, but I think it's important, and I think that no country in the world can really take an advantage from the dismantlement of the European Union.
We're going to take two more questions, one after the other, and then we're going to wrap up the program. So any ladies in the audience? We've only had men ask questions.
Can I speak on behalf of my wife?
No, because I'm sure that your wife is in agreement with me.
Italian blood.
Oh, yeah. So she cannot but share my position.
Thank you. Actually, I'm from Bangladesh Medical Press Service. My name is Hakikul Islam Khokon. Thank you for giving me the chance. My question is actually different. The global, the leadership in Bangladesh, there is a Prime Minister is a woman and opposition leader is a woman from 1991. So do you think, all over the world, including Italy, leadership can go up, women leadership, become Prime Minister or President? Thank you so very much.
Let's save that question, and then let's take another question, and we can answer both questions. Any other questions? Right there, gentleman in the back.
Thank you. Nicola Scevola, an Italian journalist. One question for the consul. Given this aforementioned sort of changing in the German position about austerity, possible change, do you think, in case this would go through, that there might be an impact also on the kind of policy implemented by Italian government? We know that the government is trying to strike a difficult balance between austerity and growth on the Italian side. Do you think that maybe some more opening on the German side could change something?
Okay, I start by the second question. I don't think that there is a shift in the position of, there is, question mark, a shift in the position of Germany. But it's not a complete change, so we don't expect from one day to the other Germany say, oh, I was wrong, we should help countries in difficulty much more. So there will be something, it will be slow, but there will be something. I don't think that this will change our policy, our decisions and the policy of the government Monti. What I think it could be, it could have a very good impact on many countries, European countries, if there is some change in this direction, helping overcome some possible very difficult situation, like in Greece first, but then in other countries. We know that Italy always exported a lot in Germany, a lot of goods in Germany. So Germany was what we call la locomotiva of the European economy. If it comes back to be more open from this point of view, that certainly means a lot for all the other countries in Europe, including and especially Italy, which is an export country by tradition. As far as the gender issue, I was waiting for the gender issue question. As I said, I was here 2 days ago and 3 days ago with my Minister of Justice. And in the Monti government, there is a Minister of Justice, Minister of Interior, Minister of Labor, 3 very heavy portfolio are dealt by women. I think it was the wisest decision that President Monti could take. And I think that there is a change in Italy. But I really admire Bangladesh for this, for what you did about the empowerment of women, because it's really good lessons for all of us.
Well, thank you so much for your thoughts. Mr. Mendes has a present.
Oh, thank you.